Hello everybody, this is Howard the Teaser King coming to you with the first 3 weeks analysis of college football. Just my thoughts and the adjustments that I'm making, which is where I excel and why I win, why I'm very successful and a winning better and handicapper. The season comes along and you have what you've read in the magazine, right? And what you've seen last year. Now you see the games, and then you get the stats, and then you see the quarterbacks, and now you make your adjustments. For example, I thought Indy in the Big Ten was a over team, but they're not. Now they're running the ball. Their quarterback's average. They don't have the same team they did, even though they have the same coach. So I've adjusted, and not to play them over, but to play them under. So when I lose an over-under, I get pissed. I look at why. What's the team done? Why are they adjusting? So that's what I like to look at. Other teams that have definitely surprised or have changed would be obviously Louisville, Army, who's explosive and blowing out teams. Even Akron, who put up 66 on Marshall. I didn't have them as an over team. Teams like Bowling Green, who I thought would be explosive, running the Baylor offense. They switched coaches. The new coach is still running the Baylor offense. Quarterback's not as good. They're not an over anymore. Trying to watch Western Kentucky. They're not as explosive as they were last year when they had Doherty. It's like when Boise State lost Kellen Moore. They went on a down sprint. And the common denominator is the quarterback. If you don't have a really good quarterback, or if you have one and then you replace him, you assume, oh, the next guy's good, or it's the system. Well, it's not. A guy can throw for all those yards and touchdowns without a lot of interceptions like Brandon Doherty, like the kid at Indiana. You then look at it and you go, okay, so it is the quarterback, not necessarily the system. The system's good, but believe me, the San Francisco 49ers, when they had Joe Montana, the system worked. When they didn't have Joe Montana, the system didn't work as well. The system, so it's a lot of the system, but it's a lot of the quarterback. Joe Montana went to Kansas City. They made the playoffs. They didn't run the same system. So you just have to see what you have, but it's basically the quarterback. So let me see what other changes are notable. There's so many teams. Let me just tell you, Houston looks very good. They're Ohio State. They run the same offense and defense as Ohio State. Same coach. We learned from Urban Meyer. Very strong team. Louisville blows out everybody. The quarterback, he made Florida State look like a high school team last week. I think South Florida is a very explosive team in the same conference there with Houston, so good luck there. Some of the MAC teams that are very good are Western Michigan, Central Michigan, and Toledo. They have very good quarterbacks, senior quarterbacks, balanced offenses. Look at Western. They ran the ball on Illinois like there was nothing. I don't know how good this Lovie Smith is as a coach. He really didn't do anything in the pros, and now he's not doing anything in college. So I don't really buy that he's a good coach. So I'm just looking at who else is good. I think USC, I don't like their coach. Their quarterback's kind of weak. They're changing quarterbacks this week against Utah. That's where you get into trouble in college. All of a sudden, the quarterback's not good. Here comes another kid that you have no idea about. He could be Joe Montana. He could be Bill Montana. So we'll have to see who we get. But again, you have to see how good they are. I think I mentioned the Army, Toledo, South Florida, Toledo. San Diego State, very, very strong team in the Mountain West. Texas Tech, great offensive team, not much on defense, great over team. Tennessee's not as strong as I thought, and they're not an over like I thought. Last year they were pretty much an over team. This year they're running the ball a lot more, and they're consequently more of an under team. Like I said, Akron puts up 65 on Marshall. Where did that come from? Middle Tennessee's a very explosive team. Not a great defensive team. They're a great over when they play another strong team. Um, but Bowling Green is not the over that they were, so be careful with them. I'm waiting for Syracuse, who's running the Baylor offense, to get going. They're throwing for like 330 a game, but they're not getting the touchdowns that they should. I was very impressed with South Florida last week. And South Florida is a home dog to Florida State, getting 6. And I can see South Florida winning that game based on Ole Miss put up a ton of points on Florida State, and they lost. South Florida's got a pretty good defense. And I don't think Florida State's offense is that good. That kid came out and had a good game, but where was he against Louisville? So I think South Florida can beat Florida State. I think there'll be a lot of points in it. Of course, Louisville looks great. Pitt looks very good. Great running attack. I thought they'd have a better defense with Narduzzi, the MSU coach, but didn't see it. Who else? Troy. They look like a really good team in the Sun Belt Conference. Appalachian State looks like a very good team in the Sun Belt. In the Big Ten, I think you got Ohio State, clearly the #1 team. I think you got Michigan State, who's in the top 2 or 3. I think Michigan is strong, but showed a lot of weakness, both against Central Florida and against Colorado. I mean, against both those teams, they couldn't run the ball, and against Colorado, they couldn't handle the pass against them. So this amount of defense that I was expecting. Now, the All-American Jordan has not played, and he's got a back issue. So I'm curious how bad it is, if he's even going to play this week against Penn State. But their secondary looks terrible. They're not putting pressure on the quarterback, and they're really not doing that. Now, I don't know. I mean, they got down 21-7 to Colorado, and they got lucky that the Colorado quarterback got hurt, or they would have lost that game. They definitely do not have the secondary, and the pass rush isn't there. Peppers blitzes a lot. He's good, but the kid had time for Colorado. They made him look like a superstar, and they couldn't run on Colorado or Central Florida. So they can't really run it. They got a great passing attack. Can't run the ball and can't play pass coverage. So I don't know. Michigan's a little bit weaker than I anticipated. Here's my top teams in college. I'd say, not in any specific order, but you got Ohio State, you got Michigan State and Michigan, you've got Alabama, and really that's it. Maybe Arkansas will come up, but that's really it in the SEC. Florida, I thought was getting better, but they lost their quarterback. Georgia looks terrible. Missouri can throw the ball, but not anything special. Florida, Georgia, South Carolina is terrible. So I don't see much besides Alabama there. I think in the Big 12, I don't see anybody. Baylor and TCU just don't look as strong. Maybe that'll adjust. TCU's got the Hill from Texas A&M quarterback. He's throwing a lot of interceptions, so waiting to see that one. Baylor's not throwing the ball for whatever reason. They got the best passing attack offense that you can't stop, and the guy starts running the ball. This Al Groh, I don't know why the other coach left. I mean, if you know somebody that commits a crime, it's not your fault, it's their fault. So I'm really having a hard time with that. The guy's a football coach, let him coach. In the Pac-12, I think your best team is Washington, and then Stanford. UCLA's okay. USC's terrible. Arizona stinks. Arizona State doesn't have a quarterback. That's about it. Washington State is very explosive, but their defense is a little bit weak. But we'll see what happens. I think in the Mountain West, San Diego State and Boise can play with anybody. In the MAC, it's Western Michigan, Central Michigan, and Toledo. The Sun Belt, you got Appalachian State and Troy. Notre Dame, they have no defense. They're a great, beautiful over team. Great passing and no defense. And that's about it I see for the really strong teams. Louisville in the ACC. Clemson, I have no idea. Troy must be a hell of a team to hold them to 30-24. And then they beat Savannah State or somebody last week. So I'm not. Clemson was good last year, and that's the trap. You see Clemson last year, and then the quarterback comes back, and everybody thinks they're the same team. Well, they got different. Half the defense is gone. Who knows about the offensive line? So therefore, it's not the same team, but everybody wants to bet them like they're last year's team. So basically, I see Louisville strong. I don't know Clemson. I don't see them as very strong. Florida State got the crap beat out of them by Ole Miss and by Louisville. I think Houston is a top team. I think Stanford and Washington are top teams. So I think there's just a lot of good teams. I think Ohio State's the best team. Alabama showed a lot of weakness against Ole Miss. Very weak secondary. Kelly had a lot of time to throw. You know, Alabama can stop the run, but they can't really stop the pass, and that's when they lose. But they get lucky. They never really play a passing team. Believe me, if they had to play Ohio State in the playoff every year, they'd never win it all because Ohio State has the offense to beat them. So that's what I see. Teams that are weaker than I thought. Now, let me just point out the real weak teams. The real weak teams are more the under teams. Buffalo, North Texas, Florida Atlantic, Florida International, Fresno State, Bowling Green's a lot weaker. Virginia, Duke's kind of bad this year. Idaho's terrible. South Carolina, not much. Vandy, not much. Who's some weak teams? I think that's about it. So it's Fresno State. I can't see. Charlotte's very, very weak. Kansas is very, very weak. Florida International, Florida Atlantic. So these are your teams that are really, really bad that you want to bet against with a good offensive team. And my last segment will be on quarterbacks. Here's the top 10 quarterbacks yardage-wise in the country. Mahomes from Texas Tech, Webb from Cal, Falk from Washington State, Drew Lock, Missouri, Nelson from East Carolina, Litton from Marshall, Higgins from Louisiana Tech, Hill from TCU, Rudolph Oak State, Stockstill from Middle Tennessee State, Ward from Houston, Rippon, who's actually Mark Rippon's nephew, is at Boise State. And that's about it. That's your top 10. I'm expecting Rosen. Well, that's yardage-wise. I mean, you got Rosen, who's 305 a game, UCLA. Basically, that's it. I mean, for top quarterbacks, or at least top quarterback yardage-wise. So these teams are more over teams. These teams are more, they're throwing for a lot, so they're not balanced. So they're going to have weak defenses because they're going to get tired. So therefore, you can go ahead and bet overs on those teams. Another quarterback is Blau from Purdue. He throws for 323 a game, but he's only got 3 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. That's basically why Purdue's terrible. When you look at Mahomes at Texas Tech, he's got 14 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. And that's what you look for, or that. Here's a hit out of Toledo. Logan Woodside has 11 touchdowns and 1 interception in 313. Talk about a sleeper team. Toledo, Western Michigan Central. Top quarterbacks by touchdown passes. I'll read the ones with more than 10. Mahomes, Texas Tech, Webb, Cal, Browning from Washington gets in. Rush from Central Michigan gets in. Stockdale, Middle Tennessee. Woodside from Toledo, Luke Falk from Washington State, Chad Kelly from Mississippi, Woodson from Akron, this Evans from Virginia Tech, and Litton from Marshall, and J.T. Barrett from Ohio State. They only have 216 yards a game passing, 10 touchdowns and 1 interception. That's sufficient. So you can see the difference. One guy throws a lot of yards, but he doesn't get touchdowns. The other guys get the touchdowns, and they don't throw the interceptions. Nobody on this list for touchdowns, you know, a couple have like 10 and 3s. Then if you go to farther down the list, there's a few 9 and 3s and 7 and 3s. Nobody has more than 3 picks, and a lot of these guys have 8, 9, 10, up to 14 touchdowns. That's what you look for. Those are teams that win. They're winners. Most of them. Well, Texas Tech had that strange game against Arizona State. Arizona State's quarterback's not that good. He's young, and he's really not that impressive. It's just Texas Tech has a weak defense. And that's the problem when you look at stats. When I look at these stats, I have to look at who they played. Because, like, Marshall's guy's deceiving. He played a high school team and lit them up. Then last week he plays Akron, who's not that good of a team, and they lose 65 to like 35. So his stats look good, but they gave up 65 points. So again, you can't really go by it. You got to dig into the stats, and that's the problem the first 3 or 4 weeks of college, because they're all playing these high schools. It doesn't even make sense. It's like the Detroit Tigers play a double-A team or a triple-A team, and they count it in their win total. It's insane what they do in college football. They should not be allowed to play these FSB teams. It should all be, you know, the top. There's 128 teams. You can play Sun Belt, you can play MAC, you can play Mountain West. It's not that hard. It shouldn't be that difficult to schedule normal teams and not go to, you know, I don't know, Villanova or somewhere, or, you know, Savannah State and play a game. I mean, I don't get what the point of that is, why that's even allowed on the schedule. And those teams that schedule that, it either shouldn't count as a win or they shouldn't make the playoff. And that would be one way to discourage it. Clemson plays Savannah State. What is that? They could barely beat Troy, and they play Savannah State. So those are your kind of breakouts of the changes and what you look for, and who's not as good as you thought and who's better than you thought. So, you know, so you start betting Army, the line's not going to be correct. You look at Notre Dame as an over team, great offense, they can't stop the win. You look at Michigan State and you go, okay, their quarterback's good. You look at Western Kentucky, maybe Bowling Green, you say their quarterback's not that good. They're not the same team as last year. Indiana, same thing. They're not the same team as last year. And that's where you've got to be careful of addressing it and not getting too carried away. Last year is over. There's a few you can carry on with, but most of the things you just got to start over. Now, Ohio State has Barrett back. We know how good Barrett is, and they're pissed off they didn't make the playoffs. They're going to just clean house. Nobody's going to beat them. That game against Michigan State will be a great game. That'll be, because the Michigan State will run it down their throats like they did last year, and Ohio State will pass it down Michigan State's throat. So it'll be that'll be a very exciting game. But that's probably it. Alabama can't handle Ohio State, so I look for Ohio State to really run the table. But it's just very very good. But yeah, you look for like teams like Washington. All of a sudden, is a top 5 team. Stanford, they don't have a quarterback, so they're running the ball and playing defense. They're more an under team. UCLA lost a lot of receivers, so that hurts them. So you can't really look at, that's the thing with college. My stats work, but you've got to be aware, hey, Memphis lost a quarterback. Hey, Western Kentucky lost a quarterback. So teams that are burning it up at 50, 60 points a game, the new guy comes in, and he's not that good. So you got to lay off of them, but then you look for the next team. Army looks very good. Syracuse should start becoming an over. Virginia Tech's running the Memphis offense, and they're starting to score. So you look at that. Washington's the play of the day. Michigan State will be a very good bet. Michigan's maybe a little overrated. So you look at these other teams. What's going on with Wisconsin? They play a weak LSU team who can't throw, and then then they can't move the ball on Georgia State. I mean, what the hell is that? And now I thought they had a quarterback, and now they don't have a quarterback. Or they both stink. I don't know what's going on with Wisconsin. It's so hard to get a quarterback. Them and LSU, it's like if they got a quarterback, they win every game. But they can't get a quarterback. Then you got Baylor with 6 quarterbacks coming out there. So I don't get it why it's so difficult to get these quarterbacks. But anyway, so that's Teaser King. Just really going over what's happening. You have to align. Texas looks better this year, more explosive, an offensive team. I'm not surprised they lost to Cal. They're not ready to be a road favorite. Cal's explosive. Cal's a very good dog. So, and the other thing is I hate these broadcasters that, they've never beaten them, and they haven't played for 20 years. 30 years ago they played 3 times, and Team A beat Team B, and now they'll say, Team B's never beaten Team A, and you're like, dude, they played 40 years ago. Who cares? It's a stupid stat. So be careful of these TV guys. They're very stupid. Their logic is based on ratings. It's not based on really breaking the game down. So be very careful, because if you start listening to them, you're going to get all screwed up. I'm offering a consultant service now on the side. I have a few customers, and they'll ask me, who do you like in this game? And I'll tell them. But I'll back it up with stats. I'll back it up with my wisdom. It's not listen to Joe Blow over here, or Lee Corso. Well, hold it, my friend, or whatever the hell he says. Not so fast, my friend. I mean, he doesn't know anything. I mean, Jimmy Johnson doesn't know anything. I mean, they don't really know how to break the game down. Jimmy Johnson's a great coach. He should be coaching. He shouldn't be analyzing that. But the rest of these guys, they give their picks. They're not using the point spread. They don't really know how to break a game down. You just don't listen to them, because it's going to poison your mind, and you're going to bet the wrong way when you shouldn't have. So anyway, come to the site. I have 4 strong locks going this week, 3 in college, 1 in the pros. www.teaserking.com. Good luck, everybody. I'll be coming out with my videos right now for the week. Take care.